Hello everybody, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics. In today's video we need to talk about 10 things you should know about aquarium substrate before you set up a tank, and we're going to take a walk around the fish room and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. It has been a while since I've been able to walk around the fish room and shut the filtration off just for a couple of minutes and show you some things. There's still not a lot going on in the fish room just yet. We still have some scaping to do, but we have plenty so that I can tell you about 10 things you absolutely need to know about aquarium substrate before you set up that aquarium. Thing number one, sand is going to be better than gravel in 99% of the cases. And if you look around our fish room, you're going to see, gosh, at this point I have one. Wow, I didn't even think about that. I have just one aquarium, this 60-gallon breeder that's currently housing nothing. And when I set up this tank again, I will probably convert it to sand. But that's the only tank we have in our fish room that has gravel. Everything else has sand. And it's going to become really obvious as I talk about the other 9 things why that is. But every tank in our fish room now has been converted to sand. Well, no, I lied. Look at that. There is a second tank right there that also has gravel, and I promise that will be swapped out as well when we rescape that tank. Thing number 2, think about the colors that you're going to go with, because the darker substrates are a lot easier to keep clean than the lighter ones. Now this tank here, we actually leave some detritus in this tank because, well, there's not much in here. We're trying to keep it cycled. That's a little pro tip for you. It's not just the fish that will keep a tank cycled, but if you have organic compounds that are breaking down, producing ammonia, well, guess what? That could help keep a cycled tank as well. But look at this. I would never want to look at that. When you first set up a white substrate, it's going to look awesome. Within about a month or two, it's going to start becoming very difficult to keep clean. Now, as opposed to, look at this 20-gallon right here. This dark substrate, I think it looks pretty darn good. It's really not showing off a whole lot of detritus or anything like that. Come over here, we've got this white substrate here. And again, these are mostly just snail shells, but you can see that, again, we have the problem just trying to keep this stuff clean. All right, so tip number 3 then, darker is usually going to be better when showing off fish color. A lot of times when you have a lighter substrate, it's going to make the fish kind of become a little bit more pale. Now that's okay if you've got things like these lake Tanganyika fish here, these shell dwellers, because they actually show off better color with a lighter substrate. But for the vast majority of fish, like these Zachoplatypus here, they're going to show off a lot better color when they are on a darker substrate with a darker background. And that's something we've talked about before. I will put that video in the upper right hand corner as well as in the description below. But that's why in a lot of these tanks we have a darker substrate, and when we rescape a lot of these aquariums, a lot of them are also going to have a darker substrate. Like this one here, I'll probably add a black or a very dark brown substrate just because, well, it's going to show off the fish color a lot better. All right, next tip. If you are going to use gravel, use a smaller type of gravel, because when you've got larger gravel like this, it traps more stuff, making it a little bit more difficult to keep clean. And that, in turn, is going to make it harder to reduce algae. And that's the next tip. If you've got a lot of stuff trapped in your substrate, like, well, right here, we've got some stuff right there trapped in the substrate. That's going to make it a little bit more difficult to control algae. And so it's not just about gravel vacuuming just to make it look nice. You want to gravel back because it's going to reduce the nitrates in your aquarium, and that in turn is going to reduce the likelihood that you've got algae growing in your fish tank. Tip number 6, and this one is often a major area of concern, and that is, well, what happens if I add a deeper substrate to my fish tank? Is that going to cause problems with ammonia spikes and that kind of thing? And I'm here to tell you no. So you look at this multi-tank, they have really stacked up. Look at the sand over there. They've really stacked this stuff up pretty high and no problems. Now, every once in a while, if you stick a gravel vac in a deeper, darker substrate or a deeper substrate, will you smell something like a sulfur pocket or something like that? Quite possibly, I have found it really not to matter. And so a lot of our tanks have a deeper substrate. Anytime that we are rescaping an aquarium, I tend to go with a deeper substrate like you're seeing over here. It really does help the plants grow. And so that's really what we're doing with a lot of our aquariums. So these tanks that have a thinner substrate or one that's not quite as deep, those are going to be replaced actually with a deeper substrate. Another thing to consider is if you've got shrimp or a lot of bottom feeders, you're definitely going to want sand. This is our Blue Dream breeding tank right here. And if I had sinking food going into this tank constantly, and I've made this mistake before with especially shrimp tanks where I had them on gravel, the food just breaks down before the shrimp often gets a chance to eat it, and then you wind up with all kinds of issues. You can have detritus worms, planaria, all kinds of horrible things. And so if you're going to have a lot of cory cats, snails, shrimp, the sand substrate is just going to be such a much better way to go, because the food is going to stay on top of the substrate. It's not going to get caught up and wind up in the substrate. Tip number 8, and we get asked this a lot. Do you need aqua soils or any kind of specialty substrate to make your plants grow? Throughout our entire fish room, the gallery on the other side, the answer is no. Not for the vast majority of your low to medium light plants. This is the 125 that we recently set up. I actually did a video a long time ago. It's a really old video on how to make your own root tabs. And if you do that, most plants are not going to need aqua soils or any kind of specialty substrate. In this tank that we just set up not that long ago, we've just, for the most part, got a black sand, and we've got root tabs in here. So I'll link that video in the upper right-hand corner so you can check that out. But all the tanks that you see, both here and, like I said, in the gallery, no specialty substrate. It's just got regular old sand or gravel. Never had an issue growing plants in tanks with just your standard substrate. The other thing that we get asked a lot, tip number 9, is, do you need a dirted tank? Is a dirted tank going to be so much better than a regular tank? There's no doubt that a dirted tank can definitely provide an advantage for plant growth. Essentially what you're doing is you've got those root tabs basically all in your substrate, and you could make an argument that those dirted tanks are going to supply more nutrients than root tabs. However, for us, we like to have the flexibility of putting in whatever fish we want in our tanks and not having to worry about, are they going to dig? Is the dirt going to get exposed? What if I want to pull some of these plants up? Well, is that going to make it so that all the dirt, or not all the dirt, but some of the dirt is winding up in the actual water column? And that's not something we want. And so do you need to have a dirted tank? Absolutely not. Is a dirted tank going to provide a tremendous advantage? I wouldn't say tremendous. I would say there is an advantage there. If you are a nano tank person, like this tank right here, could certainly be a dirted tank because we've got pencil fish in here, we've got some shrimp in here, plants. Are we ever going to put fish in here that would dig? Well, we don't have them right now, but we wouldn't be able to if we wanted to make that change. But for right now, that would be a good example. Will we do a dirted tank in the future? Maybe, possibly, but it's definitely not something that's required, needed, or necessary. And finally, tip number 10. Can you use color substrate? You know, the blue or the pink or the orange or the red. Now, clearly, when you look around our fish room right now, that is not the case, and I don't expect to do anything like that in the near future, although I think it would be fun to kind of have something a little retro. But can you do it? Sure. Does it have any negative impact on fish? Not really. I mean, the color substrates, could the color eventually wear off like it has in this black gravel, where now we're seeing, well, the black gravel's got more white to it than it used to 8-10 years ago? Yeah, it will eventually, potentially that color will come off a little bit. Is it dangerous for the fish? I haven't really noticed any difference between regular substrates that are not a specific color and the gravels that are. So if you want to do that, you can. If that's what's going to bring you excitement to the hobby, that's fine. All right, everyone, so that was 10 tips when it comes to aquarium substrate. Check out the videos in the upper and lower right-hand corner if you want to learn more about aquarium substrate. We are going to be working a lot on this fish room, getting these tanks scaped and making them look good in the near future. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so. As always, thanks for being here. We'll see you next week.